Let's enjoy a Wendella Boat Tour. Come on, everybody.
Everybody, you guys ready for a boat ride today? What do you say?
Yay!
We'll cruise around out there. I'll tell you all about the city and the skyline. Once we're all done, we'll head back in, do the whole thing again in reverse, and then we're going to head south on the river past where we dropped, where we picked you up. So we're going to do our lake and river cruise. Now, I'm going to tell you about the history of Chicago on our tour. We're going to talk about Chicago culture, and of course, this is an architectural cruise, so we are going to talk about the buildings. But those aren't the main reasons I'm excited to have you all here today. The main reason I'm excited is I love my city. And my big hope is by the end of this tour, all of you fall in love with Chicago as well. Does that sound pretty good? Then we're on the right boat. That's what we're going. As we pull away from the dock here, if you had to guess over here on our left, is this a newer or an older building? If you said older, you're already learning how to read the skyline. How do you know that? Well, again, materials, right? Surface of this building covered in terracotta tile. Look at all the details on there. Those are all tiles on the surface of that building. That building from the 1920s, that's the Wrigley Building. That's a name you'll see all over town. Wrigley Field, Wrigley Chewing Gum. That's all bubble gum money you're looking at there from the 1920s. This building trying to look like a cathedral in Spain. So we call it the Spanish Revival style. Anytime you see one of these more decorative buildings along the river, more often than not, there'll be a revival style building from the 1920s. As we come out from underneath the bridge, take a look over to your left. Another revival style building. This is Tribune Tower. Tribune Tower, where they used to make the Chicago Tribune newspaper. High-end condominiums today for you younger folks. Newspapers. They used to make you pay for yesterday's news. Ask your parents about it. Top of that building trying to look like a French Gothic cathedral, so they call that the French Gothic Revival style. In front of the boat here, on the left, take a look at the peacock here. NBC Tower, trying to look like Rockefeller Center in New York. Rockefeller Center, beautiful Art Deco building. We'll see more Art Deco buildings later. But one of the things about Art Deco is it has to be built in the 1920s into the 1930s. This building built in 1989. That doesn't count as Art Deco. So if you're copying the Art Deco style, they call this Echo Deco. Cut across the river, you'll see the fourth tallest building in Chicago, this big white box with the black stripes on it. That's the Aon Center today. It used to be the headquarters for Standard Oil back in the 1970s. When the building first opened, covered in white marble. That white marble did not appreciate Chicago winters. Started to crack and fall off the building. They had to replace it floor by floor with granite at the cost of about $1 million per floor. There's about 80 floors to that building. I'll let you do the math. Staying on the right side of the river, you'll see this brown building with the stripe on it. We don't care about it. Look at the building behind it. See all those wavy lines? That's Aqua Tower from 2009. Those wavy lines are patios designed that way, so it looks like water is flowing down the surface of the building. Get it? Aqua Tower. Third tallest building in the city over here on the right. The big blue wibbly wobbly building with the cross shape on top. Take a look at the 83rd, 84th floor. You'll notice you can look right through it. Now, we've already seen 3 of the top 5 tallest buildings in Chicago. Trump Tower, number 2, helped along by the Spire, number 3, the St. Regis right here, number 4, the Aon Center. We just saw. I told you, look at that 83rd, 84th floor, how you can look right through it. That's because there's no walls, there's no windows up there. Those are blow-through floors. You want to alleviate some of the wind pressure on a building. One way to do it is let the wind blow right through. But as we get closer and closer to the building, you might start to feel sad for it because it's all alone out there. Don't. That building's not supposed to be there. When they founded Chicago, they made a promise that our lakefront would remain open, free, and clear for all Chicagoans for as long as the city was around. Well, back in the 1960s, the people that built Lake Point Tower found a little loophole in that law. Whoop! Out popped Lake Point Tower. Since then, we've closed that loophole, and now it's out there by itself. It's in timeout, thinking about what it did, all right? Don't talk to it. The origin story of Chicago. It's a story in three parts. I'm just going to share with you the first part. The first part of this story starts about 150 years ago when we had a horrible disaster here in Chicago, which might have been the best thing that ever happened to our city. Nod your head for me, folks, if you've ever heard of the Great Chicago Fire. A few of you, yeah. So October 8th, 1871. It was an unseasonably warm evening in Chicago that night, 9 p.m., when a fire broke out on the south side of the city. If you take a look at the skyline behind us here, you see that big bunch of taller buildings? That's about the southern edge of where the fire began. Mrs. O'Leary's barn is where it started. Now, the first problem was the firemen got lost on the way to the fire. And there were 30-mile-per-hour winds that night that started to push the flames in towards the city. The firemen finally arrived. They did their best, but they soon realized they were outmatched. Their only hope was that the river would act as a natural boundary to protect the city from the flames. But we just talked about how filthy that river was, right? The river caught on fire that night. Here's how the flames spread across the city. As the fire would burn inside a big warehouse, as it would start to suck in air, that would create vortexes. So there were burning tornadoes inside the buildings that shot the flaming roofs off and sent the debris across the river, starting the fire anew. The fire jumped the river twice that night. It burned out of control. It burned for days. All of downtown Chicago was destroyed. We lost everything. If you take a look at the skyline right now, I told you about where it began on the southern edge. See those buildings over there? The fire burned past everything that you can see in the skyline behind us here today. If you're familiar with Chicago, Lincoln Park is where the fire finally burnt out. Now, everything I've told you so far is true, but there is a myth about the cause of the fire. Back in 1871, they blamed the fire on Mrs. O'Leary's cow. Remember, the fire began near her barn. They said that her cow kicked over a lantern, and that's what burned down the entire city of Chicago. Let's think about that critically here today, shall we? 1871, poor immigrant woman's animal. Do you think they were looking for somebody to blame? You can see both events in your lifetime. Here's how many people are living in Chicago the year of the fire. 300,000. Imagine during your lifetime, your city grows from 3,000 to 300,000. This is the fastest growing city in the world at that time, and nobody knows what they're doing. What's here before everybody shows up? Woods, right? So what are the buildings made out of? Wood. What are the streets made out of? Wood. What are the sidewalks made out of? Wood. And if you want to open up a lumber yard next to a turpentine factory across the street from an orphanage, no one's going to stop you. Very loose zoning laws is what I'm trying to say. So when a small fire breaks out on the south side of the city and the entire city burns down, is that some poor immigrant woman's cow's fault or bad city planning, right? That was the cause of the Great Chicago Fire. But like I told you, probably the best thing that ever happened to us. Because a certain type of person comes to Chicago after the fire. Architects descend on this city, and they start to rebuild before the grounds even cooled off. By 1885, one of these architects says, maybe wood's not the best building material. Maybe we should try something else. What about a steel structure? We could build taller that way. They invent the world's first skyscraper right here in Chicago, arguably a direct result of that fire. So you see, everyone, if it wasn't for the fire, I wouldn't have a tour to show you here today, right? We wouldn't be spending this quality time together. And wouldn't that be the real tragedy? I think so. In front of the boat is the lock. It's run by the Army Corps of Engineers. You'll see their great tower next to the lock. That's where they operated from. Our captain right now is talking to them in the lock, getting permission to head on in there. Now, there's a couple of reasons for the lock. The main one being the surface of the lake is about 5 feet taller than the surface of the river. So they have to raise and lower the boats as they go between the different bodies of water. The way they do that is with 2 sets of double doors. So straight in front of us are those double doors. You can see there's some boats in the lock. What's going to happen is they're going to open up those double doors. They're going to empty out the lock. All the boats that are in there are going to sail on out. Once that's done, we'll sail on in. They're going to close the double doors behind us. Then they're going to crack open a second set of doors and flood the lock so that we move up to the surface of the lake. Once that's done, the doors will open up the rest of the way. We'll hear a buzzer goes off. It sounds like this. And that's our signal to head out onto the lake. We're going to get a great view of Navy Pier as we go around the front of it. Just a moment before they changed the name to Navy Pier in honor of veterans from World War I. During World War II, a military training installation. They used to have pilots practice taking off from the pier and landing on boats out on the lake. The lake we're heading out to, this is Lake Michigan, part of the Great Lakes system. It is a fresh water body of water. It stays cold pretty much year round. And it's for that reason that they were able to go down to the bottom of the lake, pull up some of those aircraft. There are over 100 World War II era aircraft at the bottom of Lake Michigan. I told you Chicago started off as a city 1837 with about 3,000 people living here. There's 2.7 million people living here today. In 1893, Chicago won the rights for the World's Fair. What that meant was millions of people from around the world coming to Chicago to show off the new inventions and innovations of the day. What that meant for us was we had to build 200 buildings to host that fair in 7 months. That's a tall order. They pulled it off. Here's the outcome, 1893. Now remember, no airports in Chicago at this time. Listen to this number. 27 million people passed through the turnstiles of that World's Fair in 7 months. And when they went home, they told anybody who would listen, you've got to go to Chicago. You've got to see it for yourself. We became a world-class city overnight. We're a world-class city to this day because of a fair that happened here in 1893. A lot of things debuted at that 1893 World's Fair. One of those being the Ferris wheel. You can see the Ferris wheel there at Navy Pier. The first Ferris wheel was about 60 feet taller than the one that you see here today. More impressive than that, every one of the cars on that first Ferris wheel, about the size of a train car, they held 61 people each. But over on our left, can you guys see the lighthouse? That lighthouse that we saw when we first got out on the lake, also built for the 1893 story about this lighthouse back in the 1980s. They were looking for a lighthouse keeper. The guy they found said, I'll work the lighthouse for free if I can live in the building. That seemed like a good deal for the city until they started to get complaints about naked people walking up and down the breakers. The guy was throwing big parties out here at the lighthouse. You might be wondering, where were the cops? Don't worry. They were there at the parties. There's stories about pigs being cooked on a spit, ladies walking around in bikinis. Finally, the city kicked the guy out. The Coast Guard took care of the lighthouse for a number of years. They've given it to the city now, and the city is talking about turning it into a maritime museum. Number 3, the St. Regis, great view of those blow-through floors. Number 2, Trump Tower. Now, I know it doesn't look as tall, but remember, it's a little further back, that spire making it a little taller. And then we can see number 1, the other building with the antennas on top. We'll talk more about that once we get a better view of it. This parkland directly right of us right now, one of the most popular parts of the city today, that's Millennium Park, built right around the turn of the century there, right? The new millennium even. So Millennium Park there, they've got a very famous piece of public art. It's officially called the Cloud Gate, but nobody in Chicago calls it that. We all call it the Beam. The Beam, that's right. Fun fact about the Beam, the artist who designed it hates that we call it that, so keep it up, everybody. Now, if you head south from Millennium Park, you can actually take a look straight right from the boat right now. You'll see a bridge going over the street there. You can see that canyon between the buildings. That bridge will take you into what is arguably the greatest art museum in the world. Those aren't my words. I do love the Art Institute of Chicago, but every year TripAdvisor does a best of the best. On more than one occasion, the Art Institute has won the award of the best art museum in the world. Now, if you continue south from the Art Institute, you know, when I was a kid, we didn't have the Millennium. We didn't have Millennium Park. We just had Grant Park. That's the front yard of Chicago historically. Grant Park, of course, where we have a very prominent statue of Abraham Lincoln. And we also have Lincoln Park up on the north side of the city where there's a statue of Ulysses S. Grant. There's no reason for that. That's just how we do things here in Chicago. And the big draw for Grant Park, when I was a kid growing up, you should still go and check it out, is Buckingham Fountain. Buckingham Fountain, with a name like Buckingham Fountain, you would think some connection to England. Turns out no relation. Now, as we head back into the lock, I have two more stories to share with you. The first one being the third part of our origin story. Remember the cause of that fire: bad city planning. And then we find this amazing planner in Daniel Burnham. So in 1909, the city of Chicago comes to Daniel Burnham, and they say to him, how about a plan for the entire city of Chicago? He thinks that if you build a beautiful space for people to live in, it'll inspire them to be better people. Well, the motto of our city has always been Urbs in Horto. It's Latin for city in a garden. So the first thing he does is he plants public parks. Today we have over 600 public parks here. About 10% of all the land in the city is public park land. One of the greatest natural resources we have is the Great Lakes. About 20% of all the fresh water in the world is stored within this system. We share the Great Lakes with our neighbors to the north, but Lake Michigan is the only one of the Great Lakes that is entirely within the United States. Great. We're very proud of our flag. Everything on the flag stands for something. I've got a white background, 2 blue stripes, 4 red stars. The 2 blue stripes represent the Blue Angels. The 2 blue stripes represent the lake and the river. The white background is broken up into 3 sections by the 2 blue stripes. In the same way, the river breaks up the city into 3 points, into 3 parts at Wood Point. We'll see that later on the tour. A north side, a south side, and a west side. And then the 4 red stars represent major events in the history of our city. We've talked about a few of them already. The 2nd star on our flag for the Great Chicago Fire. The 3rd star for that 1893 World's Fair. Now, we had a 2nd World's Fair here in 1933. That's the 4th star on our flag, which leaves the 1st star, which represents the first time the American flag was flying over this part of the country at Fort Dearborn, right around 1800. The fort, the fire, the fair, and the fair. If you can remember the 4 F's, you can remember what all 4 stars on our flags are. Marina City. Bertrand Goldberg is the name of the architect here. Bit of a social scientist, trying to change where people live. See, back in the 1960s, not a lot of people lived downtown. They'd work here, they'd go home to their apartment down below. Stores, restaurants, fitness center. Used to have an ice skating rink in there, still has a bowling alley. Used to have a movie theater, which is now the House of Blues. I got that all out before a plane came by. So Marina City, an introvert's dream. You can live your whole life without ever getting out of your pajamas in a building like that. They call it Marina City because there's a place to park your yacht. If you take a look over to your left, you can see we've added about a mile of new shoreline to the city with our river walk. It's a great example of a positive loop. As more folks come down to the river, the more interested they are in keeping the river clean. And as the river gets cleaner and cleaner, well, the more people come down and visit. And that just keeps getting better and better. And guess what? All of you are some of those people. So we're glad to have you on the river here today. Another great view of buildings with this reflective glass. Look at how the neighbors across the way appear to sail across the surface of the building. Part of the reason why architects love this reflective glass so much is because every time you look at a building like that, it's going to look different depending on the environmental envelope. Now, the next building coming up on our left, great example of how we respect our architectural heritage here in Chicago. This is the Builders Building, this building that changes about 3/4 of the way down. Part of the building closest to us from the 1920s. Annex in the back and the roof added in the 1980s. If you take a look at the section from the 80s, you'll see it's built with modern materials and in a modern technique. But as we get closer and closer to the building, compare and contrast the 2 different sections. You'll realize that that newer section, though it doesn't exactly copy what's come before, it is inspired by the older section of the building. it still respects its architectural heritage. You'll get a closer look at the builder's building as we come out from underneath the bridge. Once you're done over here on the left, we're going to cut across the river, take a look at the style of architecture we talked about earlier on the tour. This big wide building on the right with the green pyramid on the top. Take a look at some of the details first. You'll see soaring vertical lines up the surface of the building, leaving the little setbacks at the top. All of that draws your eyes up the building, making for a very optimistic style of architecture. This is Art Deco from the Roaring 20s, right? Anytime you see a building like this, soaring vertical lines, setbacks at the top, more often than not, it'll be that Art Deco style. Now, this building is the Merchandise Mart. This is where merchants in Chicago would shop for goods for their stores back in the early 1930s. You wouldn't shop for a couch here, but the shop that you shop at might shop here for 5,000 couches, if that makes that any clearer for you. Absolutely enormous building, 2 full city blocks. Building so big when it first opened, it had its own zip code. As we come out from underneath the bridge, eyes up, cameras out, as we head into one of the most breathtaking parts of our river. Welcome, everyone, to Wolf Point, a 360-degree view of architecture here on the river. Most of the buildings built around here, built just the last few years. As we come back up the main branch of the river, we talked about some public art we have here in Chicago, right? Like the Bean. Here's another piece of public art for you, the Merchandise Mart. What am I talking about? Well, on the other side of the river from the Merchandise Mart, there's a big black box full of projectors. If you come by here after dark, they project art onto the surface of the Merchandise Mart. It's a free public art program. They do it twice a night. They feature different artists throughout the year, and they call it, get this, Art on the Mart. Now, as we continue on the river, over here on the left, an old warehouse on the river from the 1910s. This is the Reed Murdoch building. Today it's got office space inside of it, classrooms, restaurant down to the base. But here's what I want you to do. As we come out from underneath the bridge, find the clock tower at the center, and then count along with me the banks of windows on each side. Over here on the left, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side of the clock tower. Look on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoop! 6. That's a lopsided building. What's going on here? Well, when they built the LaSalle Street Bridge that's behind us, they had to widen the street. To do so, they cut off a chunk of this building and rebuilt it so you would notice. You see, guys, this is why you go on these tours, right? All of us, we know what's up. See these people on the shore? Not a clue. As we come up from underneath the bridge, another style of architecture we haven't talked about yet. Building with the 55 on it. Let's take a look at the details. Deep set windows, concrete on the surface. Kind of an intimidating style of architecture. This is called brutalism from the late 1960s. A lot of social upheaval in the U.S. at that time, so they wanted an intimidating style of architecture. A lot of government buildings and college campuses from the late 1960s built in the brutalist style. Great view of the main branch of the shoreline. As we come out from underneath the bridge, see if you can find a building that looks like a green glass champagne bottle with gold foil around the neck. If you see it, point at it so everybody can find it. Anybody's got it? This guy's got it. 3 people. Oh, there we go. We're getting it. Over here on the right, carbide and carbon building, soaring vertical lines and setbacks. Let you know, Art Deco building. You know the style, you know what it's from, the Roaring 20s. What's going on in Chicago? Prohibition. Want to see how we felt about not drinking alcohol? Look at the building that looks like a champagne bottle. It tells you everything you need to know. Now, before we headed out here today, I told you I was going to tell you about the history of Chicago, its architecture, and its culture. But more than all of that, I want you to ask yourself, did you fall in love with Chicago today? I hope that you did. And if you did, just tell people about us. Tell them what a good time you had. Tell them to come and visit us. So on behalf of Wendella Tours, on behalf of the captain, the crew, and myself, and the United States Blue Angels, I want to welcome you back to what I truly believe is the greatest city in the world, Sweet Home Chicago. Thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day. You've been fantastic. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. It lets me know that you are enjoying the content.